I think there's this debate in surfing. Is style something you learn or is it something that's natural? What do you think?
Oh, well, you know what? It's interesting because I see people focusing, like, to my personal opinion, over focusing on style. And I think style has a lot to do with technique, right? Like when you have a proper technique or an efficient technique, then style kind of comes through. But then you can work on certain things to, like, exaggerating or accentuating certain movements or your stance or your posture, and that adds to your style, right? So if we think about it, let's go. I'll go all out and put myself out there and talk about Craig Anderson. You know, he's an amazing surfer, but to me, his style is just so, like, he worked so hard on looking a certain way that to me doesn't look natural. You know, and he's an amazing surfer, and I have nothing negative to say about him. Personally, I'd rather look at somebody like Rob Machado that has such an amazing technique that his style comes because his technique is so polished. His arm placement, the way he looks, the way he rotates his hands, you know, it's so, the way he walks on the board, he stands, that creates that style, you know, instead of trying to look a certain way and then kind of forcing that into, you know, into your technique. I'm not saying one is wrong or one it's right. That we're all different, and it's an expression. Your style is an expression of yourself, and it should be unique, you know, to yourself. But what I'm saying is, I see it when it's natural, like Aki. Like Aki is just raw. He is raw, and he has one of the best styles ever. You know, I love the way he surfs. He's just raw, but then he has really good arm placement sometimes. But then on a backside, the snap or reentry, he barely rotates his torso. He's all torque. He's so strong that he doesn't need to rotate the torso like I do, or like maybe a thinner guy, lighter guy has to do to create more torque, or even like Mick Fanning. You know, his torso is like, you know, that wind up effect with his hips, and Aki's just one powerful powerhouse. So it's like, then his style kind of, it's because of his body build, and then Curran has that style, and then Kelly had his style, and his style changed because he started applying more pressure to his surfing and going more radical, and then his style suffered. You know, like Kelly, and sorry Kelly, I love you, but his style, when you see him in the early 90s, was just like, oh, I watch him till the day. It was like the most flawless, most beautiful thing to watch, because it was like the best mix of like Curran with like this innovation and this flow and this flair, and it was just like nothing better. There was nothing better. So good. And then it changed because he started going crazy after some crazy turns, and I don't know, maybe his hips or who knows what exactly, like, but it definitely changed. He still surfs beautiful. He still has an amazing technique, but it definitely changed. It's not where it used to be. And then if we can talk about quickly about Ethan Urin, then you're like, wow, look at that technique and that style. It's like the marriage. It's almost like a perfect marriage. So there's so much.
It's gorgeous. Yeah. Well, so when you said earlier that you think some surfers focus too much on style. And I guess the question is, you know, let's say you're a beginner surfer versus an intermediate surfer versus an advanced surfer. And obviously it depends how you define it, right? But let's say you're a beginner surfer, you know, you're kind of trying to figure out how to catch waves and ride down the line. You're not really doing maneuvers yet. Let's say intermediate is somebody that is starting to work on maneuvers and they can do maneuvers, and then advanced, you know, they're doing maneuvers extremely well and they're just trying to refine it. For each stage, how would you say, what emphasis should there be on style?
Yeah, so I will suggest to focusing more on proper technique, on proper posture, on proper arm placement, right? Without being too rigid, right? Like, I don't tell my surfers, hey, change your style, looks horrible. Or like, I'm like saying, I just go like, hey, if you bend your back arm, I'm a regular, if I bend my arm and all of a sudden my arm leaning, like before I get to the forearm, it's extended like that, it's my hands pointing that way, right? The moment I bend my elbow, my hand can point up, can point forward, can point down. So just that right there, it's one of the best examples to just adjusting one part of your body can change your weight distribution, your projection, and a lot of things. So more than style, I focus on technique, because I think style is something that it's really innate, and I wouldn't dare to actually be like, like you should change your style. But if I see a lot of surfers that sometimes they look really good posture, like back knee a little knocked in, the hand, like hands pointing forward, but then they can't get the ball on the rail. And I'm like, what's the point? You have all this perfect posture, but you're so over focused on that, you haven't even learned how to put the ball on the rail and do a proper rail turn. So it's surfing is very unique, and it's not an easy sport to like teach, to coach, to actually, do these adjustments to change and better your technique. But I will definitely focus on technique, posture prior to style. And then I will suggest, okay, if you want to do something and you want it to look certain way, why don't you do this, based on technique, and feel how that arm being lower, what it does to your style. How are you going to look? And then based on that look, coming from technique, from arm positioning or compression or rotation, then how does that look? Does that look better? That's it. More importantly, does it feel better? Is it more, it's smoother? Is there more flow in the movement, more harmony, and then
right.
I think that's the way I approach my coaching more. It's more like that than, put your arm like this and let your hand, your front arm, let it dead, don't move it. I don't approach it like that.
Right. Well, I think what you're saying has a lot of truth to it. And it's almost like there's a certain level of style, which is just good technique, right? If you have bad technique, for example, your stance is too wide or whatever it might be, right? That is bad technique and also going to be bad style. But then once you get to a certain level, as long as your technique is sound and the fundamentals of your technique are sound, then the style is just an expression or an extension of it. And there's all sorts of variations, right? So from Greg Anderson to Rob Machado to Ethan Ewing. And then at that level, it becomes more personal, but there's still that foundation of good technique at the base of it. So it's it's like kind of the cherry on top, right? Is that what kind of you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And I'll give you my daughter's example, Shakti, like, and to go back to, because I think it's very valid point. Like, I never really told her anything about style. Her style is her expression. It's how she rides a wave, how she flows through movements. But what I really made an emphasis on, it's technique. Ride the wave, like surf the wave, be on the right part of the wave or where there's energy, and be efficient with your movements. She doesn't do this, thank God. She surfs on the rail. She keeps the ball on the rail constantly. And when I see that, and it's like people are like, they really are drawn to her style, but because her technique it's efficient. It's a proper technique, and there's variations and things and tweaks that you can do. But like when she does like a front side top turn and blows the tail and goes into a layback, that's all her expression. I'm behind her telling her, if you extend your back leg, you're going to kick the tail and, compress your front leg. You shift your weight to your front leg, and your tail is going to have less friction, and you are going to be able to throw that tail easier. On top of that, if you use your back arm and you swing it, it's going to help bring that chest to your front leg and release the weight and shift the weight from your tail to your front leg. It's going to release easier. You're going to have, at the end of the turn, a better, your weight distribution is going to be better balance. You're going to come out of the turn usually better. And then she adds her own spin to it, and so that's why to me, and style, it's a very personal thing. And usually if somebody wants to look a certain way, which I really haven't, and I think a good example is somebody that has a narrow stance and they look good, but then they can't compress because they're too narrow, they're too tied up, and then it's affecting their surfing. And anyone will look at them and like, wow, it looks graceful. Look how cool that stance and stuff. But then it's so limiting to your performance, right? So that's when you have to be careful with it. And I'd rather focus on proper technique with mechanics behind it to help understand the student why certain things are better than other things, and to actually find what works for you. Because like I said, not everybody moves the same way. Not everybody has the same center of gravity or the same way to learn things. So it's really fascinating that way, because you never